self-generates. It'll keep going. There's a strong possibility that once really into full force in your body, when you put an artificial heart in, that self-generative force managed to sustain itself for an indefinite period even after that by using of the use of other energy systems within the body to sustain it, but eventually it'll break down, always. The artificial heart has never worked very long, very well, because it can't do all this other stuff that happens. So it's both holonomic, the information of the totality with any of its expressions as a piece of it, and very stable. There are other characteristics of a torus form. By the way, you see forms of toruses when you the water swirling down your lavatory drain. You notice it'll start and turn like this. That creates a form of a torus. A NASA engineer, I gave this program in Norfolk one time, and he was there, and he said the problem of toruses for NASA had been considerable, because toruses will form in any non-solid medium, any liquid or gaseous medium that gets going like that will form a torus, and it can raise Cain. The torus was probably the genesis of the Foo Fighters in World War II. As I always say, that was my war. I didn't own it, but I was in the Air Corps. I was in the Air Corps, and I know that the Foo Fighters that would form on the wingtips of the fighter planes at night, you remember that? And some of you might, or you've heard of it. These little balls of light and energy that would bounce all around on the wingtips of the airplanes, and we called them the Foo Fighters. They didn't appear all the time, but when conditions are right, here they would be. This NASA guy says one of the biggest problems they faced originally in trying to put up these pilings for oil rigs in the ocean. The peculiar swirls of water that would form around the pilings created serious electromagnetic energy, which then could foul up all the works of the rig. The other interesting thing that this NASA guy said, because I was getting into the heart and the whole thing, he said, when the blood flows into the cell, first major cell of the heart, it doesn't flow in, it comes in under tremendous pressure and in a cyclonic fashion, twirling around. And in each of the major ventricles of the heart, the energy of the blood flowing in under pressure, as it does, creates a torus. And the torus creates enormous amounts of electromagnetic energy. So the whole heart is producing this electromagnetic energy at each point of its operations. Furthermore, further studies show that the blood vessels of the body, particularly the major arteries of the body, are rifled on the interior like the rifling of a rifle to set the bullet into a spin which is far more stable and will go over a much further area and hit the target. And so that same rifling is found inside the major blood vessels of the body to do what? To speed the energy of the blood along in a cyclonic fashion. You know, the great Rudolph Steiner, who was a student of the great playwright Goethe, Wolfgang von Goethe. And Goethe was the first one to say that the heart is not a pump, He said, that's the silliest thing on earth, because immediately that we invented a pump, like the water pump or the steam engine pump, we immediately started equating ourselves with our invention. It's been a habit we've had ever since the golden calf times of Moses. We come up with this great invention out of the fire of our mind, we throw our gold into it, and here comes this incredible thing, we fall down and worship it. No, that's not what the creative process is all about. It's recognizing one's identity with it, not separating from it and worshiping it. But here you had the equating of ourselves with the pump we had just invented and saying the heart was a pump. Goethe said, nonsense, not at all. About early part of the 20th century, a very strange Austrian scientist and philosopher named Rudolph Steiner, who was a great student of von Goethe's, and as a teenager had translated Goethe, every single work of Goethe's he had translated and became totally familiar with, and then underwent all sorts of mystical experiences with Goethe in these fields of influence that he uncovered in doing this. And Rudolph Steiner said the greatest discovery of the 20th century would be that the heart is not a pump, but profoundly more than that. And then Rudolph Steiner spelled out every aspect of the heart's activity that my teacher in India, point for point, that they were talking about 1,000 years ago in Kashmir, of how it is generated within, expressed without, and we enter into the brain's experience of the creative process that results. And Steiner saying the greatest challenge of humanity following this discovery will be to allow the heart to teach us a new way to think. Because in that new way of thinking, the heart will find its own next level of evolution. And that's what we were created for. Now, boy, la-di-da, talking about your new age, here it was in full dress 100 years before it became popular. I could go on with what Rudolph Steiner said about the heart. Steiner said, instant by instant, the entire universe collapses into a single form, a single power within the heart, and radiates back out as the frequency spectrum of the whole universe. It's doing so billions of times per second. In other words, it's an oscillation of energy generated by the heart going out, which then our brain translates as our experience in this marvelous living world. And of course, the great trick is to maintain a state of equanimity or coherence so that you can be a rightful part of that whole structure rather than a non-thinking zombie simply jerked around by all these different forces. Is that making any sense? Let me just stop right here. Is any of this making sense? Because I realize every once in a while this is throwing an awful lot of stuff out there at once. But this Taurus form is really quite interesting as it happens. And particularly the fact that once set into motion, it has a tendency to self-perpetuate and continue going. There's one other part about it, and I think with that we would take a little break to let us kind of digest some of this.